What are you dreaming about?
Hi, I'm Margaret. You've seen me at the movies. I have been looking forward to the movie After since I heard about its origin story like last year. So the basic premise of the movie is this studious girl meets this bad boy and they fall in love. That's it. After is, and I am not kidding you, One Direction fan fiction. No, really, like, it's all still there. So of course I read it because I think the most valuable way to critique this movie is on its own terms. Let me break this fanfiction situation down for you real quick in case you're not familiar. So, an original property exists. Fans create their own works based on it. Sometimes they change enough that it can be ostensibly called and remarketed as a new property. For example, Stephenie Meyer wrote Twilight. E.L. James was inspired by it and adapted that story into the 50 Shades series. That story was picked up and made into its own Hollywood movie. And that's how we got After. Except for one major difference. The original property isn't a property, it's a person. That person is Harry Styles from boy band One Direction. Remember them? You don't know you're beautiful. Members of One Direction are some of the most common characters in real person fiction, as this subgenre of fanfiction is called. And I do mean subgenre. Like, I can make broad and correct claims about the category. Like, it's usually written by young women and uploaded online to be read by other young women. The main character is frequently a young woman herself, and her characterization is usually pretty flat so that the writer and the reader can imagine themselves in her place. They usually fall in love with a famous person, sometimes in an alternate universe where the famous person goes to their school, or in really creative scenarios to bring them together. If you're interested in how young women are creating these very fascinating works, I highly recommend on YouTube Jenny Nicholson. She has two very good videos, One Direction During the Purge and Trapped in an Island with Josh Hutcherson, I think. The stories do frequently involve sexual content written by and for young women, which is a really new and interesting look, I guess, into how these young women are negotiating coming to terms with the concept of sexuality at all. Unfortunately, this has led to some more unpleasant tropes, like Kidnapped by One Direction, which is where the main character and writer and reader, they don't have to take responsibility or feel shame for their desire. What do you expect them to do? They have been kidnapped by One Direction. One of the reasons One Direction is so prominent in the real person fanfiction genre is because the height of their fame and the internet becoming available for their target audience, young women, and the variety of online platforms seeking users who would just generate this free content, this all coincided. So there were a lot of places that you could find this kind of story, and these days the undisputed home of real person fiction is Wattpad. The original story of After, before the names were changed for mainstream publication, is still on Wattpad. It's still there, where author Anna Todd first released it. Wattpad is part self-publishing platform and part social network, so it's really easy for young people to use, and use it they do. It also generates its own hype and produces its own popular authors, and lately has been finding ways to leverage that enthusiasm into more traditional publishing industries. After isn't even the first Wattpad story to become a movie. Penguin Random House, the book publisher, published The Kissing Booth in 2013, after it won Wattpad's annual award for most popular in teen fiction, and in 2018 it was made into a Netflix film. Of course, this isn't exactly a meritocracy. Wattpad puts a lot of emphasis on data and engagement, even to choose the winners for their awards. So the next great American novel is not going to come out of Wattpad unless everybody's cool with it being a self-insert story about One Direction with lots of drama and an author you can follow on Pinterest. So I did read After, and it's not even that remarkable in its genre. It does, however, have 100 chapters and 2 sequels. After like most stories of its kind, was released as a serial with chapter updates rather than a complete book you can read in one sitting. This is part of why it's so unnecessarily long and poorly paced, but it is in good company for that. Like, Victor Hugo was paid by the word, Anna Todd did this for free. This is also super useful, especially when popularity is determined algorithmically. It's kind of like people getting pumped to see what happens in the next Harry Potter book, but every day. And Harry Styles is there, so that makes for a very engaged audience. Before I talk about the story itself, I want to mention the author. I think that real person fiction stories are kind of weird and dehumanizing, but I give their young authors a lot of credit because they're practicing writing and putting themselves out there for criticism, which as young women they already get a lot of, and they're publicly negotiating very personal experiences and thoughts. So I have nothing but respect and a little concern for the 15-year-olds on Wattpad. But Anna Todd isn't 15. She's 30, married, and has a child, and is making money for wanting to bang boy band member Harry Styles.
I've just always loved fan fiction. So I saw on Instagram where people were writing One Direction fan fiction, and I was the only one of my adult friends who liked One Direction's music, and I was like, what is this? Somebody's writing fan fiction about One Direction? And then I realized it was not only, you know, young girls, it was grown women, it was grown men, it was this whole world of fan fiction.
Her writing is not distinguishable from a 15-year-old's, although we have to assume that her graphic romantic scenes are better informed. I don't know what else to say about that specifically, I just feel that it's important context. And now that you know more than you ever wanted to know about what young women do online, it's time to know more than you ever wanted to know about After, a Harry Styles love story. Because Anna Todd doesn't know real man Harry Styles, she can characterize him however she wants. She chooses instead not to do this. Her Harry is still British for some reason, but lives in Washington State. He is a member of the fraternity Theta Chi, and most importantly, has tattoos. Her Instagram still has her and her fans' edits of what that might look like. The tattoos seem to represent that he is a bad boy and not good for the main character, who is a goody two-shoes and very judgmental college freshman named Tessa. And he is not good for her. On several occasions, Tessa points out that whenever they talk, she usually ends up crying, and honestly, I don't blame her for that. She frequently remarks on Harry's mood swings. The mood swings are entirely arbitrary and unmotivated in the text. The author just needed to make some drama to stoke the comments, so she made Harry do something very whack, inform Tessa's high school boyfriend that she's cheating on him with Harry. Apropos of nothing, where did this come from? So Tessa's exasperation with Harry's mood swings are honestly reasonable, and they almost have this crazy fourth wall thing going on here where we can see her responding in universe to a character we can also see being puppeteered into strange actions. This goes on for the entire book, which in paperback form is 608 pages long. I'll say this for the movie version of After. Despite having no narrative structure to speak of, it's still got a stronger one than the book. Without Harry's mood swings, Hardin, as he is find and replace named in the published book and movie, is somehow an even flatter character. I was curious to see if they would keep him British, because there's no narrative reason for him to be, just that he was originally written to be Harry Styles, and they do. Most of One Direction is here too. Here's Landon. Here's Zed. Niall's analog is called Nate in the published book, but I think Jace is supposed to be Niall-ish in the movie. And Louis, or Louis, does not appear here at all. I could be wrong about those last two. I don't know my One Direction lore very well. I just listen to the songs. And there is a hint of potential in the original story. Both Tessa and this particular Harry Styles, along with their respective mothers, were abandoned by their alcoholic fathers when they were 10. So I see how Tessa's mother has become overprotective to the point that she fears Tessa hanging around with people with tattoos will jeopardize Tessa's academic future. We really just have to go with that. Harry's mood swings appear to be a mysterious generational effect of alcoholism. It's heavily implied that he was traumatized by his father's abandonment, although that manifests very arbitrarily when the story needs conflict. Here's my favorite part. Harry's mother has convinced him to move to America to go to college, where his father is the president of the college, not the country. They say chancellor, or if you're British, chancellor. We took a chance. But uh-oh, drama. Harry's father is going to marry Liam's mother, and he's mad about it. So Tessa gets roped into this because Liam is her first friend at school, and Harry is frequently violent towards Liam as part of his resentment. I think that conflict is more interesting and, dare I say, original than the other 98 chapters of the story. Does the film resolve this conflict central to Hardin's character? No. And Hardin confesses to Tessa that his father was indirectly responsible for Hardin witnessing and failing to stop, at the age of 8, an assault against his mother. Then Tessa is like, I'm ready, and the audience is informed that they hadn't been sleeping together for the previous 70 minutes of runtime, so we have to watch that happen. My favorite part was watching for what they chose to keep from the original story. And let me tell you what, this is a very faithful adaptation. Like, details and lines are lifted verbatim, and it's really wild to see actors deliver this dialogue that does not even land aloud. I made a bingo board of all the stuff I hope they'd keep. And in like the first 3 minutes of the movie, my favorite line in the story appeared, like shoehorned into a completely different scene just to get that line in. I guess maybe it's everybody's favorite line. In the story, Harry says sarcastically to the high school boyfriend, "Nice cardigan." And the boyfriend responds, no punctuation, "Thanks, it is from Gap," which is so funny to me. I did not get a bingo, but some things that I thought I missed ended up being like woven into the production as Easter eggs, woven eggs. I've mixed a metaphor. Like in the story, Tessa opposes pop star Harry Styles' metal music choices. This is pop star Harry Styles. You don't know you're beautiful. With her preference for Bon Iver, if that's how you say that, and The Fray specifically, and I thought that there was no mention of this, except for then I listened to the soundtrack and there is a song by The Fray on it. A recurring theme in the story is that Tessa doesn't like ketchup, and this is used to suggest that Harry actually does care about her when, on a second occasion, he demands that her burger be taken back and replaced with one without ketchup on it. This callback does not appear in the film, but the ketchup comment is like lobbed in haphazardly as a shout out to the fans. What boggles me is that this incredibly unoriginal, very poorly crafted story was algorithmically chosen to be a movie, and then they didn't even improve it for the movie. Like, they didn't even make a better movie than the story was a story. Like, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs took a single concept from a picture book and turned it into this entirely new, inventive, and fun story. I love Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. And this is happening in the same world where everybody involved with After had the chance to be like, should we make it good though? And they said no. But like, there are fans to get excited about this ketchup thing. Like, fans of the story After. As far as I know, I'm alone in the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs fandom. If there are people who only like the published book and weren't there for a Harry Styles stand-in, I don't know about them. But it is no secret that this movie I can go see at the movies at Meadville is a thinly veiled fantasy from a 30-year-old woman about singer Harry Styles if he had no personality besides being the worst, having tattoos, and being the worst. And that's all the reason I think you should need to go see the movie After. Like, I recommend reading the story first with the original One Direction names. Make your own bingo board. Truth be told, the movie is not strong enough to be worth your time on its own. In fact, it is a poor film and not entertaining. But when you know that this actor knows he's supposed to be somebody's imaginary Harry Styles, and that this movie was made because billions of people read and were invested in this woman's poorly written fantasy about Harry Styles if he had like these specific tattoos and was the worst. Look, this might not be an important cultural moment, but it's a cultural moment, that's for sure. I need a second. I'll see you at the movies, Meadville.
They call themselves afternators. In the beginning, they called themselves toddlers, but we were like, let's not do that because it's like, yeah.